Welcome to Plain English with Pastor Jay, God's Word for everyday people.
So I'm going to start out by asking a question. How many of y'all in here like watching horror movies? And be honest. I got some folk like, no, I ain't trying to watch no horror movie. I'm one of the people like, I loved horror movies. And it's partially my mama's fault because she probably shouldn't have had us watching the stuff she had us watching. Night of the Living Dead, Stephen King, It, Gremlins. Gremlins wasn't really a horror movie. That was more funny than horror. But we grew up watching horror movies, and there was certain stuff that always happened in horror movies. Certain stuff. And I'm one of the people like, I talk to the folks in the movie. Where are you going? You know, you always got one dude named Bobby. You all hear that noise? I'm going to go downstairs and see what it is. He ain't got no gun, no knife. He take a flashlight so he can see what's about to get him. It's always that one. So what's some stuff that y'all have seen in some of these horror movies that make you mad? Anything, somebody, anybody? I heard somebody say fall down, running up the stairs. Where are you going up the steps? Where are you going? So me and my wife, you know, for those that don't know, we're an interracial couple, so we have interracial arguments where I talk about her people and she talk about mine. I roast her about tacos and she roasts me about fried chicken. This is just how our household work, okay? So we had a conversation. I'm like, now all these horror movies, it's two racist things that happens in every horror movie. Number one, the first black guy you see, he about to die. It's just point blank. Your time is limited. I just want you to know, you are not gonna see the end credits. Just want you to know, that's not how horror movies work. Hollywood is bogus for that, but it's true. Number two, because they didn't leave my white brethren out. It's always a white woman that's gonna trip and fall when she running away from the thing that's gonna kill her. Mandatory. She gonna find something to trip over. So I watch these movies and I get angry and I get mad. Like, why are you running up the steps? You can't get outside. Ain't no doors out. When you tripping, I got mad at this one woman. She failed so many times. I'm like, would you kill her, please? She said, like, hurry up, put out a ministry. But there's another part about horror movies that gets me fired up. The monster been killing folks all movie. They done ran from house to house, monsters show up. They go to another state, monsters show up. They hide in the woods, they hide in the city, they hide in the field. I feel like I'm singing Blessed right now. And the monsters show up everywhere they go. Now the monster is proving to you, I'm not quitting till you're dead. Like he's telling you this. So when they finally get a jump on the monster, they pull their trap off, they done got him locked up, they done beat him in the head and knocked him down. Do they finish the monster off? No. They run again. I never understood this. If you got him down, I'm screaming at the TV, shoot him in the eye, stab him in the heart, set him on fire, cut him in pieces and mail the parts to different parts of this. Do something to make sure the monster don't come back. But you watch them run off, and you already know, 5 minutes, he gonna show up. He gonna kill two of y'all. I already know, two more of y'all go. And this thought process made me realize there's really nothing new under the sun. These stories were even in the Bible. And I'm gonna start out by reading you a passage. In 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 1, it says, after the death of Saul, David returned from his victory over the Amalekites and spent 2 days in Ziklag. On the third day, a man arrived from Saul's army camp. He had torn his clothes and put dirt on his head to show he was in mourning. He fell to the ground before David in deep respect. Where have you come from? David asked. And he said, I escaped from the Israelite camp, the man replied. What happened? David demanded. Tell me how the battle went. The man said, our entire army fled from the battle. Many of the men are dead, and Saul and his son Jonathan are also dead. How do you know Saul and Jonathan are dead? David demanded. The man answered, I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear with the enemy chariots and charioteers closing in on him. And when he turned and saw me, he cried out for me to come to him. How can I help? I asked him. He responded, who are you? And I told him, I am an Amalekite. Then he begged me, come over here and put me out of my misery, for I'm in terrible pain and want to die. So I killed him. the Amalekite told David, for I knew he couldn't live. Then I took his crown and his armband, and I have brought them here to you, my lord. David and his men tore their clothes in sorrow when they heard the news. Then David said to the young man who had brought the news, where are you from? And he replied, I am a foreigner, an Amalekite who lives in your land. And the first part of this that I had to look at, like he hearing this phrase, I am an Amalekite. I'm like, well, what is an Amalekite? Looking into this, I found out the Amalekites were a nomadic tribe that roamed around the wilderness. They were known as cruel cowards. How do you describe a cruel coward? What is that? If anybody, and I know sometimes I got some younger folks around here that have seen the craziness that's on World Star. You hear folks yelling that out when foolishness is happening. Or if you've been on the internet and even on the news, especially over this past year, there was a thing being played in major cities called the knockout game. The knockout game was when you would have some unsuspecting, normally it was a senior citizen, walking down the street, and a young man would walk up behind him and just punch him in the face. The goal was to literally knock the person out and catch it on film. This was a game. Cruel cowards. How do you just walk up on somebody that don't even know you coming and just swing on them and think it's funny? There was a man that literally died from being hit in the back of his head, and he fell unconscious from the hit and then hit his head on the concrete, and he died. Cruel cowards. So what I found out about the Amalekites was that as the children of Israel were leaving Egypt on their way to the promised land, the Amalekites said, y'all got a whole lot of stuff. But the Amalekites don't believe in fighting fair. They don't come at you from the front. They waited until the mass majority of the Israelites, and historians say it was anywhere from 2 to 3 million people, had gone by. Typically, as they moved, the military and the stronger members were in the front because this is where you expect to be attacked. The Amalekites weren't like that. They waited till you went by, and they would cut off and surround the stragglers, which were typically your seniors, the ones who are sick, who are lame, children, women. This is how they fought. And they attacked the children of Israel and wiped out the ones who were at the rear, the ones who were moving and weren't surrounded by the protection of the military. This is why they were cruel cowards. Well, Pastor Jay, how did you find all that out? Deuteronomy 25 says, never forget what the Amalekites did to you as you came from Egypt. They attacked you when you were exhausted and weary, and they struck down those who were straggling behind. They had no fear of God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies in the land he has given you as a special possession, you must destroy the Amalekites and erase their memory from under the heaven. As an aside note, be careful about touching God's anointed people. Understand, the Amalekites weren't on the list of nations to be wiped out. They put themselves on the list. When God says, oh, don't worry, we still gonna get you to your promise. And the minute we get to your promise, we're gonna go back and handle this. That's not the other side of God I wanna be on. When he says, I'm not going to forget. That's a scary place. But this is where the Amalekites found themselves at. They attacked from behind, killing all those who were following the main group. And this is why in 1 Samuel 15, God sends Samuel to Saul. And Samuel says, Saul, God has sent a word. And that word is, I am going to settle my account. It's not like one of them old gangster films, one of them old Godfather movies. I'm going to settle my account with the Amalekites. And he says, Saul, I want you to take your army and wipe out everything. God is so specific, he gave a list. Women, men, infants, children. He said cattle, oxen, donkeys, like everything means everything. If they touch it, if they own it, if they have anything to do with it, wipe it out. Now to me, as I read the Bible and I like to use my imagination, I don't understand why this was such a difficult thing for Saul to do. Saul, you are anointed of God. He has given you battles that you haven't even had to fight. He's proven to you that when he says, go do this, he's going to help you go do this. You know this. So when Saul goes to destroy the Amalekites, and the Bible tells us that he decides to keep some of the choice items for himself. Doesn't kill the king, keeps him as a prisoner. If I'll be completely honest with y'all, I started laughing because this don't make no sense. Like, God told you to wipe them all out. Did you not think he was going to find out? You done kept like a pig and a donkey for yourself? What part of this did you not understand? I didn't understand it, and I kept looking and reading. I'm like, Saul, you lost your whole kingdom over some donkeys, 2 sheep, and a grown man. Was it really worth it? Man, I would never do that. You tell me to go kill some stuff, I'm killing everything. Losing my kingdom over this. And as I'm laughing at Saul, you ever had them times where God checks you real quick? Oh, you think it's funny? Oh, you think you so good that you would have been so much better than Saul was. Yeah, uh-oh is a key phrase, because you know that don't go well for me when I had these conversations. And he was like, so let me ask you a question then. What is your Amalekite? Since you're so good at killing everything, and you have no problem with obeying my voice, right? What's your Amalekite? So I started having to look and say, okay, Amalekite, what is my Amalekite? What is a definition that we can use that can bring this to my life today that I can say what is mine? Well, I know first and foremost, an Amalekite is something that don't fight fair. It waits until I'm at a weak point, whether emotionally or spiritually, and it attacks. It doesn't care anything or have any fear of God or God's rules or his laws whatsoever. I also know from this story with Saul that Amalekite is something that God specifies. Like, you know, some stuff that we know we shouldn't do. There's some stuff we know we should get rid of. But there's some other stuff where God points at that specifically for you, and he says, this right here, you need to get rid of. So where there's no gray anymore, this right here, kill that. And it started like hitting home to me. And the more this started floating through my mind, I'm like, okay, so if it doesn't respect God, it doesn't care about my well-being, it attacks me, it's looking to keep me from getting to my promise. It attacks me as I'm traveling along. It's something specific God says to kill. Lord, help me. He brought me to Colossians chapter 3, verse 5. He says, you want to know what I told you to kill? Saul? Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. Well, just 3 minutes ago, I told you I don't want to be on the other side of. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived. Then it was, but I'm not done. Romans 6:6. For we know that our old self was crucified with him so that the body ruled by sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin, because anyone who has died has been set free from sin. Okay, God, I got you. He's like, no, you ain't got me yet. Galatians 5:24 says, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. The Bible is telling us to truly belong to Christ. My flesh and its desires must be killed, destroyed, crucified. And I started looking. And I looked in the mirror and I said, like Saul, who are you? And my flesh said, I am an Amalekite. Because what I realize, my flesh has no fear of God. My flesh is doing everything possible to keep me from reaching the promised place God has ordained for me. It's doing everything possible because it knows that to walk in God's promise, it cannot have what it wants. My flesh waits until my spirit man is weak. And it tempts me with things that I know God doesn't want me to have. It attacks me spiritually. This is why fasting is so important. About how we weaken this thing, because what we tend to forget is that it has a mind of its own. I had a great conversation with the youth maybe about 3 weeks ago. Well, no, maybe about a month and a half ago, and we were talking about racism in the world. The reality that people will look at you and see you as an African American and make a judgment decision on who you are, what you about, where you live, where you grew up. And the funny part about racism is you can't judge me based on this. That's like me judging you based on the car you drive. Well, because you drive a Toyota, I know that you got to be up to no good. You must have grew up in gangs and rat-infested homes. It's just the car I drive. What are you talking about? This is not me. This is just the vehicle I get around in. So I have to start separating it and understand that some of the things that come against me are not me, it's this. Anybody ever have arguments with yourself? I'm trying to be, let's be real. I argue with this. Because when I start understanding that this is separate from me, then I can see it as the enemy it actually is. Some of y'all in here know you got high blood pressure. Doctor done told you, you can't have no more fried chicken. You go to the family reunion. Your body look at the table and say, that Popeye sure look good. Your mind says, now you know we can't have no Popeyes. No, you better go over there and get some of that grilled pork chop or chicken or something. You can't have no. But your body says, but we can have just one. We just want one biscuit. Just eat one. You can take a pill when you get home. Just eat one. My sister is a diabetic. She got the sugar, as they say. I watched my sister walk up to the table, big, huge cake. Tukey, you ain't supposed to have no cake. This chick pulls the unit out her back pocket, start pushing the button on the automatic insulin. Oh, we eating a slice of cake today. Don't tell me your body don't have arguments with you and win. My mind, Bishop was singing it. I'm saying the right words though. My mind is telling me no, but my body, your body is saying, go over there and get that. And whatever that is that you shouldn't have, there's a battle here. So when my flesh says, I am an Amalekite, I can understand that there's some stuff that needs to change in me to truly belong to Christ. This thing has to be killed and put on the cross. Has to be. One of the things that got me about Saul, you're going to ask the very thing that God told you to kill to help you. And this is what flesh will do to you. Flesh wants what it wants. It don't care that drugs will kill you. If you get addicted to it, that's what it wants. And flesh has this incredible ability to adapt so that what used to make you high don't quite get you as high anymore because your tolerance has built up. So what flesh says, instead of flesh being smart and saying, we probably don't need no more of that. We should probably stop. You know, man, I ain't getting as high as I used to be. This would be a good time to call it quits. No, what flesh says, we need more than what we had. You got to get some more. I was in Walmart yesterday. Woman in the next aisle, y'all know how these folks in Walmart talk like they are the only person in the store, but they on the phone. She telling me all her business, and I'm listening. Talking about how one of her family members broke into her house and stole half of her stuff. Do you understand that addictions, this flesh will make you do some stuff that makes zero sense? There's nothing in your mind, you yourself, that would say it's a good idea for me to break into my mama's house and steal her stuff to go get this drug. But your flesh will say, you got access to that house. And this is what I need. So you need to go get it. Because you know flesh can't do nothing unless you take it, right? But I want to bring this to a place of all seriousness and let you understand through something that's modern what happens when we fail to eliminate the things that God calls us to destroy and how it can affect our families. Media team, if you guys can help me out and go ahead and run that video for me.
Let's talk about the intervention. Tell me about the time you got the call.
My son called me.
Mm-hmm. Gary called.
Yeah.
And what did he say?
He said, Mama, we have to do something about it, I said, okay. Went on down there and did what I had to do.
Mm-hmm.
One day my mother came to my house. It was kind of funny, but like now I look back at it, I see the love and the passion that my mother had for me and she has for me. And she walks in with these sheriffs and she says, I have a court junction here. You're either gonna do it, you do it my way, or we're just not gonna do this at all. She said, we're both gonna go on TV and you're gonna retire.
Wow.
And say you're gonna give this up because this is not worth it. She said, I'm not losing you to the world. I'm not losing you to Satan. She said, I'm not doing this. I want my daughter back. I want you back. I want to see that glow in your eyes, that light in your eyes. I want to see the child I raised, and you weren't raised like this, and I'm not having it.
So you start this book with the day you found out that Whitney had passed. Can you tell us about that moment?
Well, my son called me, and he was screaming, Mama. And oh, God. I said, what is wrong? What's wrong? He just said, Nippy, Nippy. And I said, what's wrong with Nippy?
You all called her Nippy, yes.
Yeah. He said, Mommy, I said, is she dead? He said, yeah, Mommy, she's dead. I don't remember too much else after that.
Were you alone when you found out?
I was alone. I was a wreck.
You think your granddaughter may be headed down the wrong road?
She very well could be if she's because she's hard-headed too.
There have been rumors about her being on drugs. Has anybody told you about that?
Yeah, I heard it. But I can't get her on the phone and talk to her like, You know how kids are. She's 19, she thinks she's old. She knows everything.
Would it break your heart to know if she were on drugs?
No, it would really, really break my heart.
Bobby Christina Brown, the 22-year-old daughter of the late singer Whitney Houston, was laid to rest beside her mother in a New Jersey cemetery on the 3rd of August, after she died last week. Brown was buried at the Fairview Cemetery in Westfield, New Jersey, a few days after her Atlanta funeral. Brown died on the 26th of July at a hospice, 6 months after suffering irreversible brain damage in a still unexplained incident at her Roswell, Georgia home. She was found face down and unresponsive in a bathtub by her boyfriend Nick Gordon and a friend in January, in an eerie echo of her mother's death. Whitney Houston was found drowned in a bathtub at a Beverly Hills hotel in 2012.
Think about that. Having a child has changed a lot of my mindset. And many of you told me it was going to happen. I didn't know to what extent. I know the love I have for my daughter. I would do anything for her. fight any battle, kill anything, or die trying. And I had to ask the question, if Whitney had have known that her dilemma was going to cause her daughter to be sleeping next to her 5 years later, would she have made some different decisions? Because you saw Sissy Houston saying, we had an intervention. And Whitney said out of her own lips, her mama told her, I don't want Satan to have you. Had she have known. But her and Bobby Brown never got together. Had she have known. This is not just your life. We're talking about the life of your child. How does Bobby feel? And I'm not here to cast judgment or blame. I'm just asking a question. If you knew that the things you struggled with, you might live through but could kill your daughter, would it cause you to look at things a little differently? Something I want you to remember is that what you don't eliminate today, you will entertain tomorrow. What you do not eliminate today, you will entertain tomorrow. Understand this. Saul is laying, literally, according to this Amalekite, he's laying down, propping himself up on his spear, knowing he's going to die. He looks around and he sees someone standing there and he says, who are you? I'm an Amalekite. Then kill me. You know what's frustrating? This was the king King Saul had been chosen by God and anointed. Do you understand the things he had seen God do? The battles he had seen God give him victory over, the miracles that had happened, all of the miraculous things that had gone on throughout his entire life to prove to him there really is a God and that he truly does have saving power. And Saul, at his lowest point where he's hurt and he's wounded, never thinks to look to God. He turns to his Amalekite. Here's something about your flesh that it does not want you to know. It will always seek out a carnal answer for spiritual problems. Always. Because to seek out a spiritual answer means that it has to submit itself to a spiritual God. It ain't trying to do that. So when Saul is laying there, instead of with his last breath crying out, God, save me, there's another king named Hezekiah who knew what to do. Lord, I'm not ready yet. And it said God made him a promise, I would give you 15 more years. Saul turned instead. How many of you turn to things that's not of God when you're depressed? You're angry. Life ain't went the way you wanted it to go. And in those moments, my question is, what do you turn to? Is it people? Is it a habit? Some people, they get high. Some people drink. Some people have sex. It's different for everybody. What is it your Amalekite wants to do to you? Remembering that when we go back to this, and Jesus says through Paul, you got to crucify this flesh. Do you understand what crucifixion is? Now here's the part where God gave me some reprieve. I'm like, God, I know I ain't there yet. I got some stuff I got a stranglehold on, but it ain't dead. It's still gasping. It's still doing that. And every now and then it busts a hand loose. I'm just telling you, I'm being honest. What I love is that God brought me back to that word crucify. understand that crucifixion is not an instantaneous death. The Romans created crucifixion, and it was a process. We're going to crucify you on Friday. That meant Friday morning. We're going to get you up, and we're going to start off by stripping you of all your clothes. We're going to tie you to this post, and we're going to whip you with a cat of nine tails. They had figured out the body could only take about 40 lashes before it gave up and died, so they do about 38, 39. And while your back is splayed open and you're bleeding, going into shock, now we're going to hand you your own cross and make you carry it all the way up this hill. But we're not done. We're going to nail you to it. Still not done. After we nail you to it, we're going to prop it up and not so gently drop it into this hole. And we're going to leave you there all day to make an example out of you for others. Crucifixion was about punishing your body to the point to where it just gave up and died. So is it coincidence that Paul uses that same terminology of crucifying your flesh? It's not a one-day issue. It's not I woke up today and I'm perfect, Jesus, I'm ready for you. I gotta nail some stuff to the cross and watch it gasp. I have to look at myself and say, my flesh has to be up here till it gives its last breath and gives out. This is why he says, if you're not willing to carry your cross, you are not worthy of me. And your cross is whatever you struggle with. He never made it. We as Christians have this crazy thing where we like to judge everybody else's sin and compare it to ours as if ours is better and it don't count as much as the other one. Well, that sin is worth 3, mine only worth 1, so I can do mine 3 times so I'm equal to you. That is not how it works. That ain't it. That's how we treat folks. Some of y'all that know me real well, I struggle with the super saint philosophy where I'm so holy and you're so evil. That thought right there was evil. Y'all see these clowns on TV talking this crazy stuff as if they haven't been redeemed from something? This is what we're facing. This is what we're dealing with. We're talking about how do we crucify this thing and get it to where God wants us to be. In Matthew 16:24, Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone desires to be my disciple, let him deny himself. And I'm reading from the Amplified version because it always gives me some extra insight into those words deny. It says disregard, lose sight of, forget himself and his own interests. Take up his cross and follow me. Cleave steadfastly to me. Conform wholly to my example in living and if need be.
Thank you for joining us at Plain English with Pastor Jay. If you would like to hear more of Plain English, please subscribe to this podcast, rate and review it on iTunes, and share it with your friends on social media. Once again, thanks for joining us at Plain English with Pastor Jay.